All right, Dr. Alex Oshmyansky, CEO and co-founder of Mark Cuban's Cost Plus Drugs company. For those unfamiliar, what is Cost Plus Drugs and what is the mission?
Yeah, so our goal is to make medications affordable. So what we do, we have a website, costplusdrugs.com. I'm going to say that a million times. And on costplusdrugs.com, you can find one of, we have about 7,000 different medications available now. And what we do that's unique is we reveal the price that we purchase the drugs at. So you can see transparently what our cost was to purchase the drugs, what our markup is, which is 15%, 15%. We had a $5 fee to pay our pharmacist, $5 shipping and handling per order, and that's the total cost of the drug. And you'll find there's all sorts of drugs we have on our site, particularly these so-called ultra-high cost generic or generic specialty medications, where you might be asked at another pharmacy to pay $2,000, $3,000 cash out of pocket for that drug. We might have it for $20, $30 for the same month's supply of that medication. And that's not the fake list price, that's the actual amount actual so-called adjudicated cost you'll be asked to pay. So yeah, if you have an expensive medicine, look us up at costplusdrugs.com. There's a good chance we may have it for significantly less.
Why is transparency such a critical component of this for your company?
Oh, sure. So kind of the way the status quo in not just the pharmaceutical industry, but in healthcare more broadly works, is everything you see is a fake list price. And then underneath, a price nobody actually knows is the real price of either the medication or the hospital service. And there's basically a large number of middlemen in the supply chain that make money by arbitraging that difference, by taking a cut of that difference and nobody knows what they get. So it works in their best interest for the prices you see to be fake. So the way to undermine all of that, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Just let people know what the actual costs are. And suddenly that entire middleman cut goes away. And I know that's a cliche, like everybody's like, hey, we cut out the middleman. But in healthcare, it's just so extreme. Probably at least a third of expenses in US healthcare are just middleman expenses. And by just being transparent, being honest what it costs us to deliver the care, we're able to dramatically decrease the costs.
For consumers, the healthcare system really is complex, expensive, obviously. You're trying to alleviate that financial burden for consumers. Why?
I don't know. I kind of view myself as kind of the George Costanza of the pharmaceutical industry. Yeah, obvious reasons. But no, it just morally wrong to take advantage of people when they're at their most vulnerable. It just makes me viscerally angry and have just gone on a sort of decade-long tirade about it. Yeah.
So take me back to the start, the genesis of this idea. The company that you have, the manufacturing plant we're sitting in right now, where did the idea spawn from?
Yeah, so I'm a doctor. I'm a radiologist by training. And this is like the early 2010s. I was working on a research project with a pulmonologist. And he came in one day incensed because 2 of his patients had died over the same weekend. They both needed a drug called Bosentan, which is for a condition called primary pulmonary artery hypertension. So hypertension specifically of the big blood vessel that comes out of the heart and goes to the lungs. And at the time, it was a generic medication, long off patent, but cost $10,000 for a month's supply. And the patients were meant to apply to a nonprofit that would subsidize the cost, and they got lost in the red tape. They needed the drug urgently, and 2 people died in the same weekend of not being able to afford their medications. And you'd think that'd be enough to get me sort of on this journey, but probably the straw that broke the camel's back. You remember a guy, Martin Shkreli, the pharma bro? Yeah. So I became, you're sort of a social media villain of the week. And yeah, I got upset by that just like a lot of people, and got together with some infectious disease doctor friends of mine and very naively decided, hey, we're going to start a non-profit pharmaceutical company. We're going to make the drugs, we're going to sell them at cost, it'll be great. And yeah, went out trying to raise funding for that for several years. Eventually got convinced it converted from a nonprofit to a for-profit public benefit corporation. So technically a for-profit company that can accept investment, but has a registered public mission with the state. And yeah, a little while after doing that, just on a whim, I saw Mark Cuban had a public-facing email address, and figured, what could this hurt? Little did I know. Joke. mcuban@gmail, and yeah, shot him an email.
Or redact that. We shouldn't put that.
Oh, Mark doesn't care. It's all over the
I'm
internet.
Joking. I'm joking. No, continue.
Yeah. But yeah, I shot him an email, and yeah, he responded within like 5 minutes, believe it or not. And we got into a little dialogue. And I think he invested a small amount of money to start with. And yeah, obviously became much more into it over time.
Now the namesake of the company.
Yeah.
Detail me that email. I mean, was it, did you send him paragraphs, or was it just, hey, this is succinct, this is my idea?
Yeah, unfortunately, since we changed email servers a couple times, and the email itself has actually been lost. But
it has.
Yeah, but it was very brief. It was just like, hey, this is my idea. This is what I'm doing. What do you think? And because I didn't expect anybody to actually read it. I thought it'd be like an employee that would like maybe delete it. No, he reads all his emails. He responded, and yeah, that's the story.
What was his? Do you remember what his response was?
I think it was very brief as well. It was just sort of like, hey, tell me more. Like, what about this part of it? And yeah, just got into like an email conversation from there.
And then, how does the investment part happen? Is it just a PayPal? Is it a Venmo? He sent you a wire?
I was kind of like, am I just being what's the expression?
Are you getting frauded or hacked or scammed?
Yeah. Like, what is it when you're dating?
Catfished?
Catfish. I'm like, am I getting catfished? Is this like
Catfished by Mark Cuban?
Catfished by Mark Cuban look-alike? But no. So yeah, he does have his own sort of internal venture capital firm with like associates. Not venture capital because he doesn't. They just sort of work for him personally, not other investors. But yeah, they do due diligence on all the company he's about to invest in, like the Shark Tank companies. Verify that he's not lying, that the people approaching him for investment aren't lying to him, that their financials check out. And yeah, it was a couple months of that process, and yeah, wound up sending over a small amount of money to start with. And what he does is he likes all of his portfolio companies to send him kind of a weekly update on what happened the previous week and like what got done. And yeah, I actually found that like a pretty useful exercise. And like, oh, I made progress this week. And I was pretty religious about it. And I think Mark just likes seeing like, oh, stuff is actually happening. This isn't just talk. It's actually like stuff is actually getting done.
Right.
And yeah, I think once he saw that pattern of like progress getting made, he was like, okay, let's accelerate this even further.
Did you reach out to any other sharks from Shark Tank during the initial investment phase? Did you email anybody else, or was
I didn't actually. I did not. Yeah,
no
one's ever asked me that question before.
But did you
I'm not sure
contact
why.
did you contact any other investor types when you were first seeking some backing for this project?
Yeah, so I pitched literally thousands of people. Yeah, I've been told no so many times. I remember I was once talking to someone about this who just looked me dead in the eyes and was just like, "You sound like an idiot," and just kept repeating that exact phrase over and over. I was like, "Do we want to stop? Like, you're clearly not going to invest." And he's like, "No, let's hear it. Let's finish it out." I'm like, "I think I'm gonna leave now."
So a simple no would have
a simple no would have sufficed. Yeah.
Yeah,
that was a fun process.
How much of that do you remember as, this company has continued to grow and hopefully you want it to scale even more, but all those no's and all those maybe negative responses that you heard, how much does that still kind of burn and, motivate you? Maybe not so much day to day, but...
I'm an arrogant jerk. They just didn't see the genius. But no, I understood because I was openly pitching, like, we're not going to maximize profits. Like, I remember one of my screening questions for if I wanted to take investment from someone actually was like, people would often ask like, oh, you want to mark up the drug by X amount. Why not triple that? you're still saving people money, right? And you'll make more money. And I was like, okay, we're probably not aligned on the mission here. So that was probably part of it. Is like I was looking for a particular type of investor who's understands that the social mission of what we're trying to do is a priority.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
You and Mark, what's the nature of your relationship now?
Now he's a true co-founder of the company. Like, it's insane, like how involved he is on the granular day-to-day detail. Because I've got nothing else going on. Like I'm focused on the company, but he is just as involved with everything else he is doing. Be that the Dallas Mavericks or Shark Tank. Like he knows when a pipe bursts, or like when a shipment, when FedEx doesn't pick up a shipment on time. Like he is, yeah, he's involved in all the nitty-gritty details.
That surprised you when he first
Yeah.
kind of came on board as an investor, and has his involvement grown as the company's grown?
I think so. I think that's fair. But yeah, I think when I realized he was really serious was when he lent his name to the company. Because that was a big moment, because he had never done that with any other company before. And when he offered, I immediately said, like, yes, let's make this happen, because it was an immediate signal that he was serious about making sure that this would work out. So one of our initial challenges was convincing other pharmaceutical companies to work with us, because what we were proposing was, now seems obvious, but was then pretty radical. And this is just a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Is we want to list your price. And people were afraid of the big intermediary companies basically retaliating against them for revealing the true prices, because that undercuts their business model of fake price, real price, we take some of the different, some of the middle.
Because other companies can then go to them and being like, how are you
Yeah, why am I buying
charging-
this from you for twice the
charging
cost? Yeah, like I can just go direct to the manufacturer. So convincing pharma companies to be okay with that took us several years to get the first company to do the first drug under that transparent model. And to this day, they actually don't want to be associated with it. They want, I mean, if you look on the FDA website, you can find out who it is pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But because it does have to be traceable. But we put our own label, so it's the only drug we've made that has a Mark Cuban cost plus drug company label on it. And that was albendazole, so an anti-parasitic drug at the time. And yeah, that wound up doing quite well, and it convinced 3 other drug companies to offer to sell 100 products through us. And that was 3 years ago, January of 2022. And yeah, ever since we did that, it's just exploded. Now we have 7,000 different products. Pretty much every major generic pharmaceutical company works with us. Large number of the brand pharmaceutical companies work with us, and we have millions of customers with accounts registered on costplusdrugs.com, hundreds of thousands of prescriptions going out like on a monthly basis. So yeah, it's been extraordinary, the rate at which it's grown.
Probably no way to truly know this for sure, but Mark lending his name to the company, did that give the company better marketability? Or maybe when you talk to these, drug companies to sell their medications, that you would have
absolutely.
more success because of the notoriety? Like, did his name kind of help, I don't know, kickstart some of what you wanted to do?
Undeniably, 100% earned media from Mark lending his name to the company, talking about it. But what actually seems to power our growth, like what causes, the best we can tie growth events in the company to is actually word of mouth on social media. I tell every drug company that partners with us the same thing, which is we'll sell almost none of your product for 2-3 months, and then out of nowhere we'll sell out overnight, and then it'll grow steadily from there. And the best we can find is like, let's say you need a drug called imatinib for chronic myelogenous leukemia. And your big 3 PBM says you have to buy it from our specialty pharmacy for $3,000 a month. And suddenly you discover, hey, we can get it for $20, $30 a month from costplusdrugs.com. You're going to go to your Facebook group with your community of other leukemia patients and say, hey, you can get your medication for 1% the cost on costplusdrugs.com. And yeah, we suddenly get flooded with requests after that point, and that seems to just be a constant pattern of just word of mouth social media. Yeah, we have a $0 marketing budget. We don't spend any money at all on marketing. And yeah, so yeah, when you provide that level of savings, kind of sells itself.
So it's really just getting the word out, right?
Yeah, it's really,
So
yeah,
people
really just letting
know-
people know.
Yeah.
And really, it's not even us doing it so much. Of course, Mark, when he talks about it on media appearances, this kind of thing. But yeah, otherwise, it's just patients letting other patients know, doctors letting other doctors know that this is an option for their patients. But yeah, we rely almost entirely on word of mouth.
All right, so I want to get into a little bit of the overview of our healthcare system. I mean, you're
Mm-hmm.
radiologist by trade, but you've spent how many years around healthcare?
Oh, so I started med school when I was 18, so 22.
Okay.
Yeah, just turned 40.
So we're in good hands in this conversation. Why are consumers dealing with high costs for prescription drugs in America? Because as far as I understand, there are some countries that are not paying as much for prescription drugs, but for some reason here in this country we are.
Oh, it's just a scam. You know, you can, like, if you really go down to the weeds, the mechanics of how the scam operates, it's incredibly convoluted. It's incredibly complicated. There's all sorts of subsidiary companies that receive payments, group purchasing organizations in Switzerland, virtual manufacturers in the Caribbean, rebate aggregators, secondary rebate aggregators. There's all of this nonsense that floats around, but it all comes down to the same sort of boilerplate scam that you see over and over again in healthcare, which is you have a fake price, no one's actually meant to pay it. There's a real price, and you can make margin. You can make margin in that difference. Like if you hide the real price of the good or service you're providing, you can charge an extra 50% on top of it for doing basically nothing, and no one will be none the wiser. And you just see that happening over and over and over again in healthcare. So is it, you know, the totality of the explanation? You know, if you get, certainly not. There are other factors, but if there's one thing that really drives healthcare costs disproportionately in the U.S. from every other developed nation, it's pretty much that we allow that scam to happen, where it happens pretty much nowhere else.
How did that supply chain scam come to be, or has it always been that way? Or it feels like, I mean, just from the consumer lens, that it's really kind of grown exponentially maybe over the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah, so it's kind of, almost in a sense, it's an accident of history. So, you know, if you can go way back to like World War II, where, you know, people forbid raises at the time to help stabilize the economy while the war was happening. So the only way you could attract people was by offering better health benefits. And you see the concept of like modern health insurance forming at that time. But specifically in pharmaceuticals, this started happening in sort of the late 70s, early 80s, where for the first time, drugs got really expensive enough for insurance to be there. And these new companies formed called pharmacy benefit managers, now known as PBMs. And what they did was like, hey, there's 40,000 pharmacies in the country. Insurance company, you don't have the infrastructure to like pay each of the 40,000 pharmacies. We'll do the paperwork for you. Like, and this is like at a time before computers were widespread. So they're like, okay, we'll charge 10 cents and we will file the paperwork to like reimburse the pharmacy. And then it became apparent like, hey, we're paying all the bills anyway. We can negotiate the costs of the pharmaceuticals as well. And here's how we'll do it so that we're aligned with you. Like, we won't charge you anything for that negotiating service. We will just negotiate a rebate from the drug cost and take a percentage of that rebate as our margin. So, yeah, that way we only make money if you save money, which sounds great. But I think it probably took all of 5 seconds to realize that the best way to make that discount as big as possible is to start with as high a price as possible. So now the average discount on generic drugs in the US, the average rebate is 87%. And if you just think about your day-to-day life, like where else do you see an 87% discount? Like it's nonsense. So the only reason for that process to exist is basically you can double the cost of all the pharmaceuticals, particularly generic pharmaceuticals, by engaging in this sort of price manipulation.
So they so PBMs kind of entered the marketplace, maybe as in a way that can be beneficial.
Yeah.
But it took on the role of being a power broker and becoming this middleman in the supply chain.
Yeah, probably like that old metaphor of like the boiling frog, like if you do it very slowly over time, what is the old fable? Like if you drop a frog in boiling water, it'll jump out right away. But if you gradually increase the temperature over time, it'll boil without noticing. I don't think that's actually true, but that's the old wives' tale.
No, but
it's kind of the same thing. Like it's just happened so gradually over time, over 30, 40 years, without anyone really noticing or paying attention. And yeah, now the system is just nuts on its face.
How do you fix it?
Yeah, that's the trillion-dollar question.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
a lot more than a mill.
Yeah, I think there's no, I think, one panacea solution, but foundationally it has to be transparency. Like that's the prerequisite to everything else. Like unless you know the actual cost of things, you'll never be able to negotiate them. And now we work with 30 or so transparent PBMs that reveal the cost of the prices of the drugs that they charge. They don't negotiate rebates or capture percentages of the rebates. They just charge a flat fee per transaction. So moving from the current broken model where the big three PBMs control like 85% of the market to a more transparent model, I think has to be foundational.
But it goes against capitalist philosophy in some ways, doesn't it? That you have to convince companies to, in theory, make less for the greater good.
Oh, I think it's just the opposite. In fact, any large self-insured employer that moves to these transparent PBMs tends to save money because it's an interesting coalition we have at Cost Plus because the two groups of people we wind up saving the most money are the most indigent members of society, those without any health insurance coverage or poor health insurance coverage, and the most powerful, because who pays for most of the health care in the United States? Large employers at the end of the day. And they are getting ripped off on their the pharmaceutical costs that they're paying for their employees. Like all the margin from the big three PBMs is coming from other industries. It's kind of a tax on every other industry. So where Mark spends most of his time is actually talking to other CEOs, talking to CFOs, talking to HR departments and saying, hey, you could actually save your organization millions of dollars a year by transitioning from one of the big three PBMs to one of these smaller ones. And it's really just a process of education.
Selling them.
Yeah, selling them.
Mark is okay at that.
I've heard that, yeah.
Do you feel like that's a role that he's playing for the company? Is really just being that kind of external salesman for things that you're trying to accomplish?
He's a world-class salesman, and it's remarkable to watch him work. You kind of come out of a room and you're like, wow, man, how'd you do that?
Seeing market inefficiencies and capitalizing on them. Despite rising costs, more and more independent pharmacies are closing.
Yeah.
Can they be saved in America?
Yeah, they could be saved right away by just changing the model by which they're reimbursed. So right now, pharmacies are actually expected to take a loss on a lot of the medications that they sell. Like they are reimbursed under the cost of the medication. Like Ozempic, very popular, drug of the moment. A pharmacist, if they dispense it, is meant to take a $50 loss. And basically the PBMs say, hey, you have to take our contract because you can't survive without us. We will pay you. Is that me? Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Oh, Siri is trying to talk. I will put that over here. Sorry. Yeah, but yeah. Sorry for.
No, you're
making
fine.
you-
No,
making
you're
you
good.
splice
You're
that.
good. No, you're
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Like pharmacies are intended to take a loss and like make money back on other drugs. There are these effective rate clawbacks, DIR fees that the PBMs charge the pharmacies for the privilege of doing business to them. And it's just old school robber baron, like early 20th century capitalism, where they are trying, because the PBMs own pharmacies, like they are trying to drive independent pharmacies out of business so they can either be bought out or replaced by their own pharmacies. So I don't think it's subtle what's happening. The pharmacies are intentionally being driven out of business. So you wind up with a worst of all worlds situation. The price that the patients can't afford their medications, the price is being wildly inflated. The pharmacy is not actually seeing that. All of that margin is going to the pharmacy benefit managers in between.
Can it get worse?
It can always get worse. My family's Slavic, like that's our motto. Like it can always get worse. Yeah, no, I think if market consolidation continues, like the need is to increase your earnings every quarter. Like that's what the market demands. And how are you going to do that? You're just going to drive more and more margin from charging pharmaceutical companies, charging independent pharmacies, charging individual consumers, charging employers, trying to drive up those costs as much as you can and making your piece of the pie as big as it can be.
For cost plus drugs specifically, do you have competitors?
You know, I was told once that you should never say you have no competitors because that's profoundly naive. You know, I would say there's no one doing exactly kind of the thing we're doing. But, you know, there's like Amazon. That's also an online pharmacy. You know, in terms of trying to transparently create sort of a coalition around transparency, I don't really think there's like a direct head-to-head competition. And even so, we wouldn't really view it that way. You know, rising tide lifts all boats. You know, like anyone who's trying to be at the forefront of this movement towards transparency in healthcare, like all the better.
Do you carry any brand name drugs?
We do. Increasingly, we have an increasingly large portfolio of brand products. We have products from Bayer, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson. We have a biosimilar product called Usimry, which we have at an incredible price. It's a biosimilar of a product called Humira. So yeah, I think more and more brand name companies are partnering with us as well.
Is it taking a while? Are you hoping more
Yeah.
come on board? What is the, what do you have to do to kind of convince them? Because right now, I mean, or at least originally it started with generics. How do you kind of bring the brand name affordability into play?
So, you know, it's very similar conversations actually to when we were working with the generic companies, in that, you know, there's no love lost between the big pharma companies and the PBMs. And, you know, we wanted to sell every drug we're capable of selling. So our goal is to have every drug available on our site. But we know from conversations we've had that the PBMs have basically threatened the pharma companies because they control the formulary. They're kind of the bouncer at the club. And they're like, hey, if you work with cost plus, you know, it's grossly anti-competitive. Can I prove it? You know, not necessarily. This is just what people tell me is, you know, behind the scenes, they're telling us, like, you will lose your formulary access if you work with cost plus drugs. So it's kind of a process of convincing the pharma companies that, you know, the PBMs are a paper tiger. You know, they need you as the pharma company more than you need them as the PBM. And there's certainly no love lost because, you know, where do the PBMs make a lot of their money? Charging fees to the pharma companies for, again, the privilege of doing business with them. So, you know, it's kind of an interesting situation where kind of nobody, buyers or sellers, really likes the big three PBMs.
How much is it predicated on fear?
Oh, I think almost all of it.
right?
Yeah. Like, yeah, basically you have to do business with us. We're the devil you know. Like, if you don't do business with us, you won't be able to sell your drug.
Yeah, it's like an abusive relationship kind of deal,
Yeah,
right?
kind of.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's, you know,
Mhm.
they
It's not
don't
a
want,
great relationship for
no,
sure.
I mean, they don't want to leave the relationship for fear of
Yeah.
what, going out of business or not
Or
being
losing billions of dollars.
not being front and center on a formulary, or
Yeah, it costs billions of dollars to develop a new drug. Like, how are you going to recuperate that cost? In general, you need to be on insurance formularies. So if you lose that placement, it's problematic to say the least.
can they just like all strike at once?
Uh,
Drug companies, manufacturers coming together and
I don't know antitrust law if they're actually allowed to do that. I don't know enough, but
didn't get
I
a
hope they will.
didn't get a degree in that one, but
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's on the to-do list.
We've touched on brand name drugs, but
Yeah.
they're the money makers, right? I mean, I think
Yeah, so
terms of
generics
sellers.
are like 90% of scripts that are written, but they're like 10 to 20% of actual drug costs. So the way to really, like, I think it's really impactful for individual patients. Like, we get countless emails, physical letters, social media messages of people who are like, hey, I thought I was going to have to sell my house to afford my medicines. I just thought I was going to die because I couldn't afford my medications. I was skipping meals to afford my medications. So, and that's what we do it for. We do it for the individual patients and improving their lives. To save the system globally a lot of money, it's really partnering on those brand and specialty medications.
Is there anything that you can do to disrupt that side of the supply chain? Generics feels like it's a little bit, I don't know, I don't want to call it easy because none of this has been easy for you, but maybe it's a little bit more simple in terms of being able to disrupt that side of the chain versus brand name.
Not really, because it's the same thing. If the real prices get revealed, then kind of the house of cards kind of falls on its own. It's more, I think just having those conversations with the brand companies, kind of in the same way as we did with the generic companies. And I think we are gathering momentum there. I think stay tuned to this channel. Hopefully, we'll have some big announcements by the end of the year.
PBMs, just in general, is there an analogy you use? I mean, some of the people watching this might not know all the intricacies that you're getting into, but just kind of on a big picture, what are PBMs relative to manufacturers, wholesalers, hospitals, patients and consumers? I mean, they're the middlemen, right? But is
Yeah.
there an analogy that you can use in terms of how to describe their role in this pharmaceutical supply chain?
Yeah, people generally fall asleep by the time you finish saying pharmacy benefit manager. Doesn't make for great TV.
No.
But the way I kind of describe it to people is like, imagine you wanted to buy a car, and you don't like negotiating. It feels sleazy. It's awkward. You're like, I don't want to do this. And someone comes up to you, and it's like, hey, I am a professional negotiator. I'm a professional car price negotiator. This is all I do. I'm going to do it better than you because it's all I do. I do it in bulk, so I'll get better rates. All I ask is a percentage of what I'm able to negotiate down for you. That's my cut. And you're like, you know what? Sure. Why not? Let's do that. And I want a Toyota Camry. Can you get me a Toyota Camry? And the person says, sure, give me 2 weeks. I'll come back and we'll have a price for you with a Toyota Camry. And 2 weeks go by, person comes back and it's like, hey, fantastic news, amazing news. I got you a 90% discount off of your Toyota Camry. And you're like, that's amazing. How did you do that? And they're like, don't think anything of it. I'm just that good. Turns out sticker was $1 million on the Toyota Camry. And you're out not just $100,000, but that person's cut, which is 10% of $900,000. So you're out almost $200,000 on your Toyota Camry. And that sounds like hyperbolic or like, a crazy, like made up example. But those are the actual ratios and percentages that happen on these drugs. Like drugs that cost $20, $30 go for thousands of dollars. If anything, it's a little bit under. Yeah.
All because they just don't know what the actual cost of the drug is.
Yeah, so basically the the PBMs are professional negotiators that are meant to be working on your behalf. But
Professional smoke and mirrors.
yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
GLP-1 drugs, like Ozempic you just mentioned, wildly popular.
Yeah.
Sales are surging. Seen those through the roof the last year, couple years, few years. What's your assessment on GLP-1 use in America today? And is that a space that your company plans to address at all?
Yeah, nothing ready to announce at the moment, but yeah, hopefully we'll get there in the near future with the same sort of process. Yeah, just transparent pricing. Yeah, it's yeah. So I'm diabetic myself, so I actually use a GLP-1, and yeah, it's worked amazingly for controlling my personal diabetes lab levels. So yeah, I think it's certainly something that's top of mind for us. Employers are saying this is where a lot of their spending is going. So yeah, I think it's certainly something we're looking at addressing.
So it's not something, anything you're carrying
Not right now.
at the
but
moment, but it is something that you would be looking to
Yeah.
carry in generic form or brand name or
So there's only brands at the moment. Products from Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, but there are others coming onto the market as well. So probably in the next year or two, there'll be a lot more competition in the space as well.
do you buy into the argument that drug makers have the right to earn big profits so they can fund future research?
To an extent, yeah. You know, it is enormously expensive to bring a new drug to market. And if you compare the amount of products that are made in the new drugs that are made in the United States as compared to Russia, the profit motive clearly works to some extent to incentivize new drug development. That being said, is there a middle ground where people can actually afford their medications while the big pharma companies still make enormous profits? I think that exists, and certainly the low-hanging fruit in between is let's just get rid of the people who are like processing the payments, who are taking 30 to 50% of the cost. Like, let's start there, and then we can have a discussion about like what the fair price of a drug is from the manufacturer.
Do PBMs serve like an actual positive function in this ecosystem?
I mean, they do some things. They're payment processors. Like when you swipe your insurance card, the actual rails with that goes down. Yeah, they do function kind of like as a credit card processor, and yeah, certainly they should be compensated for that service. But Visa, MasterCard make 2-3%. They don't make 30-50%. So there is a function for them, but one of the arguments I hear all the time is like, well, what if the PBMs go away? Like, what's going to replace them? And they really only exist here in the United States. They don't really exist anywhere else. People just use their credit card. It's fine. So do they serve a purpose? Yes. Is it a purpose that could be replaced by a much lower cost alternative? Also, yes.
What's a hypothetical PBMs just go away? So then what happens? The hospitals, pharmacies would have to negotiate directly with the manufacturers or the wholesalers?
Yeah, and we actually really encourage that. Is sort of direct contracting, direct negotiations. Employers could go to Eli Lilly or Novo Nordisk directly and say, hey, what are the prices that I can get the product for my own employees? And initially, it makes intuitive sense that by being able to negotiate for millions of people at a time, that the big PBMs would be able to get better pricing than you would as an employer of like 50,000 lives, let's say. Mm-hmm. But what winds up happening is that the big PBMs take so much advantage of their position of power that negotiating directly winds up saving a lot of money.
Are the drugs that you carry at Cost Plus Drugs the cheapest on the market, or does it depend on which drug that you're selling?
Most of the time we are. That being said, I can't say for each individual product, like, is it at that specific moment? Is there somebody with a better price somewhere?
And why is that? Why would there be other companies that maybe have a drug that is cheaper, given the model that you explained and transparent and only,
Yeah, generally it's a timing issue.
Okay.
Like we bought a bunch of the product like a couple months ago, and it's since dropped in price, and we still have inventory that we're selling through. So generally, at this point, we're working with pretty much all of the major manufacturers, so we have access to pretty much all the pricing for generic products. So generally, it winds up being an issue of when we purchase the drug
So
at
like
any given point.
GoodRx, for example.
Yeah.
Could they have a product or a drug that's cheaper than something that you're selling at a certain time?
Yeah, and we certainly encourage people to, shop around. Like, we're all about the patient, so if GoodRx is a better solution, by all means. The one difference from GoodRx, from what we do, I would say the biggest difference is, we work sort of outside the status quo versus they're very much a part of it. Like if you look at GoodRx's financial statements, at least the last ones I read, which were from a couple of years ago to be fair, but like half of their revenue came from the big 3 PBMs. Because basically the way they work.
They're really another intermediary, are they not?
Yeah, so basically if you're an independent pharmacy or a pharmacy in general, you swipe a GoodRx card. GoodRx charges a referral fee to the pharmacy, which oftentimes, if it's a very cheap medication like atorvastatin, cholesterol medication that's been a generic for a long time, the pharmacy again is forced to lose money on that transaction, and a percentage, and that money actually doesn't go directly to GoodRx. It goes to the PBM, who in turn pays GoodRx a percentage of that money that was clawed back. So it's kind of a way for the PBMs to kind of get their pound of flesh, like even on cash pay prescriptions. And again, it moves towards this model where pharmacies are intended to lose money on the prescriptions that they make or that they sell. And yeah, we're trying to move around that. We've created what we call the Team Cuban Card Pharmacy Network. So we do have a benefits card program as well that has a different model for independent pharmacies, which is you get the same prices you would on costplusdrugs.com, so same drug costs, but with a $12 dispense fee to pay the pharmacist. And what effectively winds up happening is the pharmacist is now uniformly profitable on every prescription they dispense. So they are never losing money. At the same time, if you average it out over all prescriptions, and we've done this for countless employers who've evaluated using our pharmacy network, it winds up saving 50-60% on average for the overall generic drug spend by moving to this transparent fixed price model, as compared to the model where you start with an insane price, you reimburse some discount off of that, and then the PBM gets a chunk of that difference. So with a transparent fixed price reimbursement model, we think we can actually help independent pharmacies stay in business. Why, that's sort of our too good to be true proposal. We can help the pharmacies make more money, stay in business, while saving payers and individual patients money, with the difference coming out of the PBM margin in between. Sorry, that's getting way into the insurance.
It made me think about
jargon.
It made me think about cost plus drugs in terms of the revenue that you all make. I understand that it's not a nonprofit,
yeah,
and there may be some advantages to that model. But the revenue growth, how does it compare to other companies that are selling medication?
So you can ask Mark about this specifically.
Oh, I will.
Because he's the one footing the bills. We are not profitable at this point, but we're doing a lot better. So as opposed to first getting off the ground, I think we're getting closer and closer to breaking even, hopefully by the end of this year. So that'll be a major milestone.
And scalability is kind of part of that, right? As you
Yeah.
manufacture some of your own and
exactly. But
into hospitals.
at the moment, our margins are pretty darn narrow. As far as we can get them down. So that 15%, that's not our net margin. That's our gross margin. I do get asked the question from time to time, like, how do you ensure that you'll maintain your social mission into the future? Like, how do you maintain that? And yeah, I think it really is down to Mark being the controlling shareholder and prioritizing the social mission of the company. Like early on, we actually went to like law schools and stuff, and we're like, hey, is there a corporate structure that exists that will make sure that we always, stay socially minded? Like, is there some way to enshrine that in our bylaws? And really didn't really get a good answer there. Like, doesn't like there are ideas, there are concepts, but really it comes down to the people.
Correct.
Yeah, and maintaining control of it.
Yeah. And maintaining the mission stays the mission.
Yeah, and that's really, one of the reasons we're able to do this where others can't is, another company, if they're making this much of a commotion, having their revenue, getting close to being, cash flow positive. Revenue's been growing up a ton. Like the actual gross dollars in has grown quite a bit. Generally, if you're in our position, you get buyout offers. And if you have a board of directors that's like, hey, I need a return on my investment, you will be bought out. And in fact, before we even launched, we already started getting buyout offers. And just the ability to be able to say no really is a large part of what allows us to do what we do and keep our focus on the social mission.
I was going to ask that because this social mission kind of goes away if you sell to somebody that
it kind of defeats the point. Yeah.
Correct. So what exactly does that mean for the future? Is Mark going to own this until forever? Or invest in it forever? And is this a forever type of deal? Because should this be in the hands of anybody else, you don't know.
Yeah, I think
what their growth mindset would be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think we do want to keep it that way for the foreseeable future. I don't think we want to exit out of it. Like, it does need to be sustainable. Like, God forbid, we get hit, Mark gets hit by a bus, he drives himself, like on 75, which we were talking about earlier. We do need to be profitable so that we stay in business and aren't reliant on, investment dollars coming in forever. So that is important to us. At the same time, we're not looking to be bought out. We're not for sale.
And that makes you unique in a lot of respects as well, because a lot of these types of companies.
Yeah, even if you go in with the same mindset that, even if you go in with the same mindset that you want to, be socially minded, you don't want to make a profit, it's often not even up to you as the founder of the company. It's up to your investors who can accept the buyout on your behalf. So, being very selective in, who you let own part of the business, I think is really the only way to maintain that. Yeah.
I mean, Mark's level of involvement and commitment to the mission now, but did you have fears that maybe he wouldn't be, and that here's a guy who's sold companies numerous times in his career, sold his majority stake in a basketball team recently. I mean, he's been known to sell at times. So did you have fears kind of early on that maybe that might be something that happens, and maybe the recent events have kind of maybe given you more confidence that he won't?
It was definitely a bit of a leap of faith, because you never know. I didn't know Mark personally at that point. Like looking at the available options at the time, like nobody was donating as a nonprofit, and the alternative is taking money from large venture capital firms who have to make a return for their investors within 7 years. They have a time horizon. So I was like, this is probably going to be the best chance of this working out. I like to think it did.
A good Samaritan investor type?
Yeah, effectively, right?
Yeah. What are the external barriers to cost-plus drugs' long-term success?
Yeah, I really do think it's down to convincing, the other pharma companies to work with us. So it's really, less like physical barriers to our long-term success, because, one of the questions we like to ask is, what does a big PBM do that a small PBM doesn't? And nobody ever answers, like, in, years and years of asking that question, no one's answered anything except they're bigger and represent more people. So it's really not physical barriers, it's more convincing all the stakeholders, governments, employers, pharma companies, that moving to this kind of model is the right thing to do. So I think that's really the battle of the coming years.
Given the changes in government positions under the current White House administration, what impact does that have on CPD moving forward, if at all?
Yeah, not really much. We are apolitical as an organization, individual employees, political persuasions, but as an organization, we're staunchly apolitical. But that being said, PBM reform is a surprisingly bipartisan issue. Like when we talk to folks on Capitol Hill, Buddy Carter, who's a very conservative, congressman from rural Georgia, and I think he's now Energy and Commerce Committee. I think he's the chair of that, I want to say. He is, he's a pharmacist, and he knows PBMs are driving independent pharmacists out of business. So he's very much for PBM reform. On the complete other end of the spectrum, Elizabeth Warren is a huge proponent of PBM reform. So where you've got a coalition of people all the way from Buddy Carter to Elizabeth Warren kind of on the same page, it's actually one of the few bipartisan issues at the moment.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I asked, is there
Yeah.
anything that PBMs do that is essential? Real quick, and I don't know
Yeah.
if we've actually got into this. PBMs, who are they? Like, are they companies? Are they people? Are they, who are these middlemen that you speak of?
Oh, sure. So they are generally they're generally the subsidiaries of big national insurance companies. So Optum, Express Scripts, Caremark, CVS are the big three PBMs. And yeah, they're owned by insurance companies, but generally they tend to be bigger than the insurance company that owns them. In terms of, I think it goes back and forth a little bit. It's maybe bigger, maybe a little bit smaller. But for a long time, actually United Healthcare has made most of its money, both revenue and profit, from Optum Rx, its PBM subsidiary. So it's kind of a tail wagging the dog situation, but they're basically, the big national insurance companies.
So are insurance companies having to work with the PBMs even though they're part of the same umbrella?
It's an interesting dynamic. I've spoken at some insurance industry conferences in the past, and you can tell who works for the big national companies and who works for the regional health plans, because the people who are listening to my talk and are kind of like, obviously mad at me are generally from the big national ones, and the ones kind of cheering me on are from the smaller ones, because basically, the big insurance companies profit from their internal PBMs versus the small regional ones basically have to pay a tax to their competitor to get access to the pharmaceutical pricing.
Where would you like to see this company in 10 years?
Oh, that's a good question. So the way we kind of view ourselves as a parallel supply chain to the pharmaceutical system, based on bedrock principles of transparency and honest dealing. So, what jargony, but what does that mean? So one, we're a manufacturer, so drugs we can't get anywhere else, we can make ourselves. Two, we're a wholesaler, or a wholesale marketplace at this point, I should say. So we provide access to pricing to institutional healthcare clients, doctors' offices, clinics, hospitals, independent pharmacies can buy drugs in bulk from us. Our direct-to-consumer pharmacy component and employee benefits, where we sell in bulk effectively to employers, regional health plans. So all of that together means we can get a pharmaceutical at a fair price to pretty much anybody who needs it through some mechanism or other. So I think trying to grow all of those four branches out over the next 10 years, where we are competitive with the more entrenched actors in the system who don't operate on the same kind of principles. Basically, anybody who needs access to affordable medication, we can be a source for them. Be that an employer, a hospital, a patient with no insurance, everywhere in between, we can get medication to people.
And how can people sign up?
Yeah, absolutely. So costplusdrugs.com, can sign up, set up an account for yourself, and when you have a prescription written by your doctor, have them send it to Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drug Company. We're in almost every electronic medical record system, every e-prescription system. It's very helpful if you have your doctor add your email address to the prescription, because then it'll link automatically with your account. And yeah, you can order your prescriptions from there.
And that's assuming that the drug is provided by
That's right. That's right.
your
Yeah.
company. What sort of response, feedback, testimonials have you had from some of the people who have benefited from your company?
Yeah. So we actually, have like a database we keep of all the like nice messages we get. It's kind of a morale booster for the company. But yeah, we get them all the time. Like as acrimonious as Twitter X can be, whenever we talk about costplusdrugs.com, we get a lot of positive feedback there, almost uniformly positive feedback with a couple crazies here and there. If people saying, yeah, you saved me hundreds of dollars a month. My mother is on Social Security disability benefits. You saved her $50 a month. I was, skipping meals to afford my medication. Like I was mentioning earlier, these are actual messages we've gotten. I was going to sell my house to afford my medication, and now I don't have to do that. So, yeah, we just almost every day we get messages to that effect, and that's very satisfying. That's what we do it all for.
Is that what you initially got into this business for?
100%. Is, it seems abstract. You get into the weeds, and it's all this financial engineering nonsense. And you're talking about, how does the AWP compare to the WAC price? Is there like an ASP component to it? You're doing all of this like really abstract nonsense. But at the end of the day, there are real people getting hurt by not being able to afford their medication. There are real people getting hurt by these games. So having that feedback that, no, all the work you put in, it is having a meaningful impact on my life, that is really impactful. That's what you do it all for.
Purpose-driven work.
Yeah, 100%.
Last question for you. So you've made it a point to disrupt this sector of the broken healthcare system. What other parts of the system do you see or envision are ripe for other disruptors?
Yeah, so this effectively same scam that happens with pharmaceuticals happens with healthcare more broadly. So hospital prices, physician prices. And that'll be a good question for you to ask Mark when you talk to him in a week or so. Sorry to break the fourth wall of your, but he's actually got a bit of a parallel project going to do some of the same things. So that'll be a good one for you to ask him about.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm so involved with the pharma stuff.
The pharma stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I was planning to ask him about that actually.
Yeah.
Because it seems like a lot of this mission and what he's been, what he feels inspired by, there might be room to do it in other ways. Is that something that you've discussed with him?
Yeah, we talk about it from time to time. What's nice about pharma as compared to healthcare more broadly is you can centralize the distribution of medications. Like you can have one central or a couple for redundancy, but you can get your drugs to everybody in the country. Like if someone's leg is broken, they need to go to their local hospital. So it's more difficult to do that at scale. But I think there are plans in the works to get this sort of transparent bedrock to more people.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Alex Oshmyansky.
Yeah, you got it.
Hey.
Yay.